All right, everybody, welcome to Madden and Unfiltered today. As you can see, Mark on the road in Vegas, kind enough to join us from his vacation. Tim Benz with you here. Madden and Benz Unfiltered, brought to you by Bella Construction. 27 years of experience specializing in roofing, siding, windows, and doors. Their large purchasing power means unbeatable prices, top quality. For a free estimate, call 724-515-5163 or visit mybellaRoof.com. Bella Construction, where quality and affordability meet. Mark, you're in Vegas. Is everybody betting against the Penguins at every turn right now?
I think they've forgotten who the Penguins are. I just hope that doesn't turn out to be the case in Pittsburgh if they keep losing. Not just the volume of games they are, Tim, but by the volume of goals.
Yeah.
I mean, when Utah comes in, and they're not an expansion team, but it kind of seems like it with them having just moved to Salt Lake City. When they come in to beat you 6-1 and totally take the gloss off Sidney Crosby scoring career goal number 600, that ain't good. That don't bode well for repeat business.
Well, you just touched on it. It's not just the losing 8 of 10. It's how they're losing and who they're losing to. I mean, my God, Mark, their goal differential right now is something like minus 34. It's the worst in the league.
Yeah, and that's not an accident. That reflects accurately how they're playing, the margin of play that favors the other team. And I don't think that the other teams are necessarily playing that great. I think they're coming in. The Penguins go out there, tank early goal, Jari with the one shot, one goal routine more often than not, and it just goes downhill quickly from there.
It definitely seems like there's a confidence factor afoot here, or a lack of belief, or maybe even a lack of consequences, desire. I don't know how you want to phrase it, but especially for the older players who've just cycled through here, it's not like they're jumping on board a team with a chance at contention. It's not like they're jumping on board the Penguins of the early 90s or, the late 20-aughts into the next decade. This is a team that's just going nowhere right now, and they're full with veterans that just seem to be spare parts.
Well, that's the big problem. That the way I state it is they don't have enough Penguins. Like, they have 4 guys left from the old days in Crosby, Malkin, Rust, and Letang. They got a few young guys who want to stake a future here, like Pickering, Ponomarev, maybe Poulin. And then they got Hayes and Achari and Glass. Recycled guys with no investment in the logo who just see it as a place to pick up another paycheck. And if it don't go right, they'll get another team next contract because there's too many teams in the league, and guys like that can play indefinitely. And oddly enough, that description and tag apply to Erik Carlson too, even though he just won the Norris Trophy as the NHL's best defenseman a couple of years ago in San Jose, even though he's a Hall of Famer, and even though he's on an $11.5 million ticket. I have never seen anybody of that quality care less visibly out there, unless he's just totally washed up. He plays men's league, no check style. He makes the same mistakes over and over again, and compounding Carlson's sins, he's not producing anymore. He always made X amount of mistakes. There was always an element, like I described, a negativity to his game, but now he's not producing either.
There was some concern back when Sullivan first took over the team, that offseason, actually before he was even hired and Johnston was the coach, that the Kessel trade would be what the Carlson trade has become. But it worked out so much better, and the same can go with all the veterans that they acquired back then. I mean, there were guys like Cullen and Daly and Schultz who could have fit the description that we just put out there, but they were better fits, they were better attitudes, they were better guys, and the momentum of the team pulled those deals along to go in a completely different direction.
Yeah, well put. I mean, the circumstances between now and then couldn't possibly be more different. And the Carlson and Kessel trades, the disparities thereof, kind of exemplify that. Tim, I'm in that locker room after games. And if Crosby's in there, Brian Rust, Malkin, Letang, after a loss, they are equal parts upset and seething. Erik Carlson might as well sing Obla Di, Obla Da. He's a circus performer. At the end of the night, take the tents down, move on to the next town, do it again. Quality doesn't matter.
Agreed. So what do they do about it? Because I know you are also simultaneously, though, opposed to bringing up the young guys that you feel aren't ready. Like, I'm more of the mindset, even if they're not 100% ready, put them out there. Like, I don't think Pickering is suffering right now by being up. And I
think he's ready.
Okay, what about some of the other guys like McGroarty?
I don't know if they are or aren't. I'm going to trust their judgment on this. The way this team is floundering, I assume if Kyle Dubas and Hockey Hawks thought they were ready, they would be here. But I'm assuming he feels that they are not. Tim, you don't get any better at Stalingrad. Okay, that especially with goaltending. That's why Blomqvist in Wilkes is a good idea. Not quite ready, maybe just slightly ready, somewhere in there, that murky area to be in the league, but he wasn't going to prosper here. He was going to get beat down. And you'd like to think he's made of sterner stuff, but why take a chance when you're not going to win anyway?
Do they try to spin off Rust and Ricard Raquel?
Ricard Raquel for sure. For certain. And obviously Marcus Pettersson's going to get traded. And I think Drew O'Connor's going to get traded too. Even though he's relatively young, he's in a contract year, and he looks pretty good by comparison. But I don't see him as a key component when this team's finally good again. In fact, when this team's finally good again, you hope he's not good enough to be on it.
And he might be worthwhile to another team as a third or fourth liner, but to this team for the future, he can't be a second liner, or they're just not going to be good enough.
Exactamundo.
Yeah. So, I don't know what else to say about him aside from, I hope they can keep selling nostalgia. I know they got 4 bobblehead doll nights remaining, one with Kessel, who we talked about, Talbot, Hornquist. I forget who the other one is. There's somebody else mixed in there as well. Yager, there's another Yager bobblehead that's going to be out there, but they can only live on nostalgia for so long, Mark.
Well, yeah, but if you're a fan of the team, you should go anyway. I'm a big believer of that. I have been going since I was 6 years old. I've been there every single year. That gives me perspective. As Spinal Tap may say, maybe too much effing perspective. But if you believe in the logo, believe in the franchise, and have a sense of history of the team, I think some of the most exciting times in this team is when they have rebuilt, when they have torn it down and brought it back. And I'm not saying that just to sell tickets. I'm saying that because it's how I really feel. I will absolutely be there. And real fans of the team will be there. The problem is, when you've had 40 years of superstars with a ton of winning in those 40 years, people don't even realize, a certain generation don't even think there's any other way. And will they go? I don't know.
Sorry, Mark. When you brought up the whole Spinal Tap thing, I just had this image in my head of Eric Carlson getting stuck in one of those pods, the Stonehenge routine.
I don't know who you would have working on a sex farm, Tim, but they might be trying to raise some hard love.
Wait a minute. Whose grandmother ran the brothel?
Daniel Sprong.
There you go. There's your answer right there. Got to get Daniel Sprong back.
Working on a sex farm. Trying to raise some hard love.
All right, let's get to the Steelers, Mark. They had a mini bye after the loss to the Cleveland Browns. Not much happened really that directly affected them over the weekend because the Bengals were also off. The Bills were also off. Obviously, they played the Browns. The Ravens didn't play and won't play until tonight. I am kind of interested to see the result of the Monday night game because the trickle effect. Most interested, especially if the Ravens win, because then that puts the heat instantly on the Steelers again. They'd just be a half game up going into this Bengals game, with I believe the Ravens bye coming up this week or next.
Yeah, if the Ravens lose to the Chargers, and Tim, what's the number on that game? I don't.
Baltimore's a 2.5-point favorite on the road.
I'm in Las Vegas, but I don't have it in front of me. If the Ravens lose, then the Steelers loss to the Browns has a bit of the mulligan about it. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Would it be better if the Steelers felt the effect of that loss? Would it make them regroup? Would it make them realize how horrific that was? Because that still, days later, is just an awful loss. Single-handedly blown by the coach with that ridiculous quarterback musical chairs, among other mistakes, giving back the third down. I mean, anybody who thinks Thomas should be coach of the year should look at that game because it's one of the single worst in-game coaching jobs I've seen in NFL history since I've been watching. But again, if the Ravens lose, and they could, it's a mulligan. Then again, if the Chargers win, they're starting to look like another team the Steelers should fear in the playoffs.
They're getting better as the season has gone along. The Steelers got better in a different way after they played the Chargers, but one thing's for certain, and this always seems to be the case, Mark, their defense is best early when everybody is healthy, everybody is flying around, everybody kind of worries about the Steelers defense in theory at the start of the year. Then they get some tape, but it's a sort of reminder of how you can defend the Steelers, which is largely just load up wherever TJ is. And, this is a perfect example. This last week against the Browns, yet again, I heard, it's a backup tackle. TJ is going to have 2.5 sacks. The more I hear about a matchup that TJ Watt is supposed to eat alive, the less sacks he walks away with. Like, he's actually better when it's a game where the opposing coach says, just put my guy out there, and then TJ goes one-on-one against him. If it's a clear-cut, obvious matchup that's in favor of the Steelers with Watt dominating, then they just slide extra protection, and Watt loses whatever advantage you think he has.
Well, first off, Tim, the more I hear about how great TJ Watt is in a season where he's had more quiet game than noisy games, the more I make a familiar motion with my right hand. He's 30 years old. He's not past his prime. He's near the end of it. And I think that's very clear when all we hear is about how he's double teamed and he gets held. Tim, that happens to every edge rusher. It happens to Sexy Dexy. It happens to Micah Parsons, Myles Garrett, you name it, it happens to them, and they overcome it. What's the big guy's name from Cincinnati has all the sacks?
Big guy from Cincinnati that has. You talking about Hendrickson or Hubbard? Who are you talking about?
Hendrickson's getting sacks. He's getting double teamed. He's getting held. So I'm tired of hearing about it. Do your job. Same with Minka. And it also tells me a lot about this defense. You know who's grabbing the spotlight? Guys like Herbig, guys like Peyton Wilson. They're taking it away. Is that good? Is that bad? Does it indicate a passing of the guard? Are some of these guys getting too old? I don't know. Interesting questions. I think that defense this year has been above average and no better. Above average, no better.
Steelers fans, Penguins fans want to hear from you. I was on DVE this morning, Mark, and they brought up what was said on CBS Sports Network. Adam Shine brought this up. He said the Steelers will probably win only 2 more games the rest of the year. Is that hyperbole to you, or does that sound about right?
I would say 3, but 2 would not shock me.
Because if it's 2, then you're basically saying that they're only splitting the Ohio games. You're getting 2 out of 3 at best, probably against the Ohio games, then losing every other tough game. That's usually not how it goes for them. If there's tough games to be had late in the year, they win at least 1 or 2. They drop games like they did last year against the Patriots, Colts, and Cardinals. That's where they get themselves in trouble.
See, I think they're going to split with Cincinnati.
Okay, that's 1.
I think they're going to beat Cleveland. Who's that leave? Kansas City.
Baltimore, KC, Philadelphia.
I think they win one of those games.
Yeah, they probably. I see that. Okay, well, then that's 3 right there. So it's 1 more.
Then again, I'll tell you, those are 3 games in 10 days against good teams. If they lose the first one decisively, they could get splattered in all 3. If they lose the first 2 in close games, they'll get splattered on Christmas Day.
It's funny, though, about Christmas Day against the Chiefs. One thing's for certain, it's going to be a 1-score game. Like, they don't splatter anybody, Mark. Like, they went to Carolina, and that had to be a 1-score game. They don't know how to play any other way, those guys.
They don't want to. They want a close 1-score game. And the more you shoot for that, the more likely you'll lose 1 or more of those. You shouldn't, like the Cleveland game.
No, I was talking about the Chiefs. The Chiefs always play 1-score games.
Yeah, but they're the Chiefs. You know what's funny? You're right. The Steelers and Chiefs, they're in a ton of close games.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no similarity whatsoever between the 2 teams.
Now, there's a theory we kind of stumbled on by mistake there, but it is kind of a talking point, moving forward.
If the Steelers played the Chiefs 10 times, the Chiefs would win 9.
Mark, anything else you took away from the weekend that was in the NFL? You said you sat down in Las Vegas, just looked at the games at the scorebook and at the sports book and threw some money down in a bunch of different games. Anything else jump out at you as it relates to the Steelers specifically?
No, but I had buffalo cauliflower at the Resorts World Sportsbook, which is a delightful place to watch football. Also, a chili cheese dog where somehow, Tim, they loaded it up with the chili, the cheese, the other condiments, but the bun was toasted. It was solid, yet had a good texture for eating, and the toppings didn't all cascade off with the first bite.
Well, see, that's a very unique chili cheese dog, of which I am a fan. But to your point, basically, like getting a chili cheese dog oftentimes just turns into having an open-faced sandwich. That's essentially what you're doing most times. You need a fork.
But not this time. I was very encouraged and happy. And the only thing is, like, the chili cheese dog in and of itself isn't so damaging, even for a fatso. But they give you tots with it. Potatoes with anything, even breakfast, that is the killer. But I'll tell you what I took away from watching the games, getting back to that. There ain't much good football in this league this year. There just isn't. There's so many mistakes. Anybody can beat anybody. But I don't call it parity, Tim, not ITY. I call it PARODY. It's a parody of football. There's just so much bad football going on, but it's close, so it's exciting. But I don't know. I watched it. I enjoyed it. I understand what it is.
Also, you could talk about, like, Washington, for instance, falls under the tent of what you just talked about. They are backsliding, and suddenly that win is looking less and less impressive.
Yeah, well, they're just a team. Well, they lost to Dallas. That's pretty discouraging.
Yeah.
But they're a team that's going to be real good in the future. They were on the verge of arriving a year early, and then they ran out of gas, as demonstrated yesterday. I think Jane Daniels is out of gas.
The NFL is looking at, and to what that means and to what degree, I don't know, but looking at the George Pickens incident at the end of the game against Cleveland with Greg Newsome. I don't know if they would suspend him for that, but if they do, Mark, who does Russell Wilson throw to?
I don't think they'll suspend him for it, but George Pickens got to grow the frig up. It's like, when was that game? He had the incident now at the end of the Cleveland game. What was that game where the pass got intercepted and he ignored the ball carrier and started fighting with the other DB?
I think it was Washington, right? Because you're talking about the one at the end of the half where Russ just threw it up. No, it's the third down. The third down bomb. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's got to grow up, but he's not gonna. He for sure is not gonna.
Well, even his comments afterwards suggest that when he said that Cleveland isn't any good and he blamed it on the weather and the road officials.
The road officials?
Yeah, well, this just shows that whenever an athlete says, I don't read anything you guys write, it's 100% lying, because there are a couple stories out there about how that officiating crew doesn't call a lot of penalties, but when they do, they call them against the road team. And that's kind of what happened. So it lived up to the reputation. And Pickens,
I thought maybe Pickens believes that every town has its own set of officials. Like in high school ball, right?
Right, like when Gene Steratore would call games for Duquesne or Robert Morris or something like that.
I think Gene Steratore often fixed games back involving Trinity High School.
Well, that's practically documented, Mark. I think we all know that at this point.
That's how he got such a big trailer back in the day.
So he's got to grow up. The other thing that I saw over the weekend, and it was written weird, so I don't know really what to take from it, but Diana Rossini from The Athletic, when I say it was written weird, she didn't indicate if she had sourced this or if this was just speculation, but she was talking about the prospect of maybe the Jets moving on from Aaron Rodgers and what would they do if they did that. And the first two names that she put out there were Sam Darnold going back and maybe Russell Wilson going to New York. But she said she thought that Russell Wilson was going to stay in Pittsburgh. And then she floated out Justin Fields as one of the names potentially that could go to New York. So I don't know. I haven't heard anything that connotes that there's a deal on the table between Wilson and the Steelers and they're just waiting for the offseason. I haven't heard anything that they're going to sign him in midseason and break the rules that they normally have like they did for Tommy Maddox. I just heard that he wants to play for a few more years. That's the only thing he said publicly.
No, I don't think there's any deal on the table. I don't think there's any negotiators going on. They just don't do that. I would wait till the end of the season anyway, Tim. I mean, I've been impressed by Russell Wilson. He's a professional quarterback. It was absurd that they subbed in Fields to throw on third down when he was 12 of 13 on third and fourth down against Cleveland, once again reflecting what a terrible job the coaching legend did to lose that game. But nonetheless, what do you figure Russ would want next year? Like $30 million? You know, because he's off the teat of the Denver Broncos getting paid off on that contract. If they don't win a playoff game, I don't pay him that. If they don't win a playoff game, I don't pay Fields what he would want. If they don't win a playoff game, I moneyball it with somebody like Jameis Winston. I understand you want what you perceive to be an elite quarterback. Let's make sure he's an elite quarterback. And might I add, Justin Fields has no future in this league other than being a backup. He's a bum. They should take that package that they rammed down the throat of that loss against Cleveland and just forget about it. Justin Fields should only play when Wilson's hurt. Wilson is QB1. Just let him play. Let him get rhythm. Let the team get behind him. The way Tomlin did that hokey pokey with the quarterbacks against Cleveland was disgraceful.
Well, it was too much, and I looked at using Fields going into the weekend as a good idea because of what Hill did to the Browns in New Orleans, but he just overplayed it, and the difference was New Orleans kept going to Taysom Hill because it was working, and it didn't work with the Steelers and Fields, and in the first quarter, they couldn't even get him on the field without screwing themselves up. That's supposed to screw up the other team. They screwed up themselves.
Well, and Taysom Hill's been doing that for years and can catch balls and has a bigger variety to his game.
Yeah, and he might even be – he's not a better quarterback. I'm not going to go that far, but they just overplayed it. And that one throw –
Tim, I don't think Taysom Hill's a better quarterback either, but I do think Fields stinks. I mean, how big of a sample size does this bum need to provide before we understand what he is, and it ain't much?
Let's get some comments here. And this. Oh, one other thing, Mark. I want to go back to hockey for just a second. We talked about this in the podcast. I thought we should bring it up here too, and that's Alexander Ovechkin. You were right. You know, when we were pointing out the track he was on to potentially pass Gretzky, it's not like he gets docked for games played that he doesn't play in with the team or anything, but it would be nice if he could, if he's going to catch Gretzky, to do it, if not in fewer games, at least a commensurate amount of games. Like, people do forget, Gretzky did stockpile some points at the end of his career, like after the Kings, like when he went to the Blues and when he went to the Rangers. There were some blah years at the end of his career too. And if Ovechkin plays really well and catches him at the pace he was going on before his injury just now, that would make the accomplishment all the greater and easy to applaud.
I agree. My worry on Ovi's behalf is that he comes back off the injury, just has like a blah 15 games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you know he's going to rush back now. He's going to rush back too.
Gretz stopped scoring. He kept getting assists, but he stopped scoring. His last year with the Rangers, when Yager sent him into retirement with an overtime goal to beat them, Gretz only had 9 goals. I mean, think about that. The all-time NHL goal-scoring leader had 9 goals in a season his last year.
Let's get some comments here. Eric says, elite D, my ass. How many elite defenses let the opposition go 4 for 4 on fourth downs? Yeah, that's the funny thing. They were good on third downs. Then if the Browns needed it, they got it on fourth down instead. And the easier question even is who lets Jameis Winston drive down the field through the snow when they need it?
You know what I would love to see? What's
punt
JJ,
or not, by the way?
JJ Watt's on CBS, right?
Yeah.
I'd like to see someone in that panel say, JJ, your brother's struggling. What should he do? What's happening? A fair question, right?
Oh, he would explode. His head would melt.
Explode like a pinata. It would be more glorious than D-Day.
Eric also adds, is it an overreaction to say the Penguins might be the worst team in the NHL?
I haven't seen all the teams yet.
We've seen San Jose, though. Maybe San Jose is worse. Like, right now, the Penguins are the worst team in the Metro. They're not the worst team in the East. They've played a lot of games. Well, I guess it's only two games difference now. Their goal differential is what stands out to me. That's the worst in the NHL, even worse than San Jose.
You know what they need to do? They need to put Sid and Gino back on the same line and at least let them get their production and keep them engaged. If that gives them a worse record, maybe that's okay too.
Does that really keep Malkin engaged, or does it just keep Sid engaged?
Why would it not keep Gino engaged?
Like, doesn't Gino prefer to play center?
I think he'd rather play on Sid's line.
Because everything else is so barren?
Yes, in a word.
Frank says, with all the milestones out of the way, the attendance may, I think he means plummet close to a pre-Lemieux level. I think it was 15K.
No, Tim, it may pummel. They may be pummeling each other in the stands. And I wouldn't blame them some nights.
That's right, because people could hear each other yelling across the arena. It'll be so empty.
If it gets real bad, I might throw Rossi off the press box ledge.
I feel like at times since the election, Rossi's wanted to do that to himself based on what I've seen on Facebook.
Rob will be okay.
Okay, let's get to Richard. He says, I get that not all their young guys are ready, but the ones that are still being scratched for fringe veterans, that's on Sullivan and his veteran respect, in quotes.
That's part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I was beside myself when I saw for that Utah game that he scratched Ponomarev and had all those veterans in there.
Well, especially because, it's even if they didn't keep Gensel, you had to validate whatever you got for Gensel, and they just don't seem all that interested in doing that.
I'm not worried about that. I just think Ponomarev's ready to play in the league, albeit as a bottom six. What he was always projected at is a good pest-type bottom six.
Sam says of the upset to the Browns, such is life in the National Football League. Yeah, I get. Look, there were a lot of.
That's an easy excuse, isn't it?
There was a lot of preemptive excuses going in the Cleveland game. Oh, the weather. Oh, Thursday after playing the Ravens. That's too much of a bad break for the Steelers. Oh, it's going to be tough because they have to get going again after playing Baltimore emotionally. And, 6-game win streaks are tough to come across in the NFL. Well, do it against Cleveland was 2-8. If you're 8-2, beat the 2-8 team, period.
Well, yeah, and now we have the excuse. There was an 8-2 team lost to a 2-8 team yesterday, right? I forget who was it. Dallas? Dallas?
Washington and Dallas was something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and see, that could happen. Steelers will be all right. Here's another scenario, Tim. This game in Cincinnati is huge. If the Steelers lose this game, they could turn into Pitt. Think about that. They could turn into Pitt.
Or they could turn into themselves from 2018 and 2019 when it went from
2020.
Yeah, in 2020 as well. Yeah, you're right. I was actually
then they lost 5 out of 6.
I was thinking about 18 and 19 because they didn't even make the playoffs those years.
You know, revelation, Tim. I'm doing this on my phone in Vegas, and the picture and the sound seem actually better, don't they?
They do. We can keep doing it with your phone if you want.
Well, here's the thing. What I'm doing right now is an extended version of doing Cameo, right?
Yes.
So I've got to launch my Cameo. There's some cheap, easy money to be had there.
Are you going to do like Antonio Brown did Cameo?
What do you mean?
Like Antonio Brown did Cameo, and he would him trying to read cold some of those requests that came into him were hilarious. Like, wish so-and-so a happy Father's Day, and he would try to vamp, and by the end, he was wishing them a happy birthday and anniversary.
You know who's the king of Cameo?
It's like Ralph Kiner. You remember when Ralph Kiner did that?
You know who's the absolute king of Cameo?
Who?
My former friend, Ric Flair.
Yes, he does do a ton of Cameo. Yes.
He makes well over 6 figures a year doing Cameo. And Tim, I saw him do it. He'd be like drunk and just decide to do a bunch of cameos while he was sitting around, and he would nail them. He would everyone was great. He's the best promo ever. He would just nail them. He'd be hammered, and he'd just kind of lock into Ric Flair mode, Nature Boy Road, and boom, 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 boom. 7 cameos, 15 minutes, lots of money, done.
Well, you should probably try doing your cameos. Just don't do it after Buffalo Cauliflower, I think is what we learned from the trip to Vegas.
I'm surprised I'm doing this after Buffalo Cauliflower.
All right, so I'm in for Mark today. I'm in for Mark tomorrow. Mark, you're back on Wednesday, and then you're working Black Friday as well, right?
Tim, I am working Black Friday. You know what? I may yet retire because today's got me thinking I should be working on a sex farm.
Mark Madden.
Sex farm woman. I'll be your hired hand, sex farm woman. I'll make my offer stand.
Brought to you by Bella Construction.